we didn't calculate well that there is a 10 to 20% possibility that those machines are going to wipe us out, right? I remember we didn't put it in the film, but I said 10 to 12 to 20% is Russian roulette, right? I am optimistic about the future. I'm very optimistic about the future. I'm not optimistic about the present.
You're not optimistic about the next decade?
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about the next year, to be honest.
The next year?
For sure.
Why the next year?
Ah, come on, Stephen. You don't want me to say it out loud? We're ruled by maniacs.
A 16% chance of human extinction, stated like it's just another Tuesday, and the guy who spent years inside Google's most advanced project says the next 12 months are what really scare him. That's Mo Gawdat, and he's not guessing. Now, let's listen to the full conversation.
I think you're spot on with that. Not the blue collar, but the entry-level knowledge work.
Yeah, and that became my first concern. You know, I sat here with Dara, the CEO of Uber, and he was quite clear that the 9 million Uber riders won't have their jobs anymore. What's your take on this job disruption point?
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, your team gave me this lovely little pyramid, basically. You know, if you think of the bottom layer as blue-collar jobs, right? More people doing manual work. On top of it, you'll have those, call them knowledge workers, mostly doing mundane jobs, like you said, clicking on a computer or responding to a phone call or whatever. Then you have the middle knowledge workers, jobs that require a bit more intelligence, anything from a paralegal to a financial analyst to all of that. And then, of course, top leadership. And most people think it's going to be starting from the bottom. I don't think it will start from the bottom. Actually, I think blue-collar jobs will stay for a very long time.
Give me an example of a blue-collar job for someone that's
a carpenter. Okay. I love to restore classic cars. So, there isn't a robot that can do that yet. Okay. This, however, anything that is call center agent, assistant, travel agent, anything that you can do with a few clicks and is mundane is going to disappear very quickly. My prediction is you're going to start to see very serious impact in 2027. Now, what you had not sensed it before because what we saw was no hiring in that segment. So that what you saw in the last couple of years is that companies were not hiring entry-level jobs anymore. It wasn't job losses yet, but that basically meant the workforce was not growing, right? The next layer, I think, would probably be the knowledge workers. As intelligence increases, a paralegal would probably not be needed because AI can do the research, or one paralegal can do the job of 4, a financial analyst the same, and so on and so forth. But interestingly, it continues to go up, believe it or not. And I hosted Max Tedmark on my documentary, and he was laughing out loud, genuinely laughing out loud, saying, most of the CEOs believe that they can fire everyone and have AI do all of the jobs. They just don't remember that AGI is going to do everything better than humans, eventually, including being a CEO.
So the first wave hits entry-level knowledge workers by 2027. Call centers, paralegals, assistants, those jobs just evaporate. And the punchline is that even the CEOs firing everyone are on the chopping block eventually because AGI will outthink them too. Nobody's seat is safe. Listen to this one.
You're not very different. Okay, you're just on top of a baseline that is continuing to grow. So your business is growing, so you continue to hire, but you are replacing human resources with compute. Okay, if AI didn't exist, you would have probably had 100 people more in your organization today, right? You now have 100 people less, and 1 billion tokens more.
Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, tokens are basically the thing that you use. It's the currency of AI.
Yeah. So if you want to get a task done by a human, you count in sort of like man hour or worker hour, employee hour. In AI, you count by compute, you count by tokens, right? And so the trick is those major tech companies, they have two sides. One is they need to replace workers with compute even more because there is a competitive side on compute where if any of them is left behind, that means the destruction of the entire business. But on the upside, they are geeks, so they know how to build the interfaces to compute, so they integrate technology within their organizations quicker than the average traditional business, right? Non-technology business, if you want. you can look at them and say, this is the preview. It's not about all of humanity losing their jobs. It's about what is the dividing line before civil war, right? Think about a situation where 20% unemployment is happening when economies are suffering inflation. I say that not to be a scaremonger. I say that because I genuinely believe governments need to wake up. Okay, government needs to at least, remember the COVID years where governments had to give furlough everywhere and ask people to stay home. If people stay home, governments have to be prepared to somehow sustain those people until reskilling happens or until we find a solution, so that those people don't feel that they're left behind.
A civil war.
Unrest, let's call it.
Civil unrest.
Yeah.
What does that end up looking like? Because on one end, the democratic process plays its role and we just elect someone else.
Does it really? Don't say that.
I don't know. You tell me.
Oh, no. I think democracy has ended a long time ago, Stephen. I think we live in the most corrupt time. I don't know about history, to be honest, but this is definitely corrupt. Okay, this definitely is not democracy. This definitely is not even congressional in any possible way. And people are angry. People are angry because their tax money is going to things that they don't choose to, that don't benefit them, that, lots of regulations in the system are being ignored.
He's not being dramatic, he's running the math. When workers can't buy what the machines produce, demand collapses. At 20% unemployment, that's not a recession, that's a tinderbox. And his read on the political situation is scary. The democratic safety valve is already broken and the people know it. That combination, jobless millions and zero trust in the system, is genuinely dangerous. Now, listen.
What I find uncomfortable is the bouncing backwards and forwards. And I don't really know what is true, because a couple of years ago, you were telling us all the jobs are going to go away. You said categorically. You literally said full stop. And now he's saying they're not going away. And I just don't, when someone's like changing form factor, it's hard to understand why they're doing it. And I think my suspicion is, back then, the incentive was to get people to take AI seriously. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, we took it seriously. We took it so seriously, in fact, that it's now a problem. It's a problem for these companies because people are now booing at commencement speeches. They're attacking data centers. They're going to elect people that are theoretically anti-AI. And now there's this inversion where no, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're spot on. First of all, Sam's entire existence, if you ask me, starting with open AI that's supposed to save the world by creating a safe AI, then making it a commercial enterprise that's worth billions, and backstabbing a few people in the process. And I have him on Chasing Utopia saying, I quote, this is exactly the words he said, you can find it online.
Chasing Utopia is your documentary.
Yes, so he basically says, well, I don't suspect that, I suspect that AI is likely going to end humanity, but we're going to create a lot of interesting companies in the process, right? Those kinds of statements are honestly not the statements of someone who's not decided. It's just the statements of someone who's being taught more and more by his PR agency or PR manager to say things as per a script, right? And the script, as you rightly said, had an objective and a target either way. And Sam Altman, in one of my works, I used to say the Altman is a brand, it's not a name. Okay, if it wasn't for Sam Altman specifically, there would have been another, Silicon Valley disruptor that would have done the same. I don't blame him for beating the market for it. The interesting challenge here is that who do we believe anymore? Who do we believe in technology? Who do we believe in politics? Who do we believe in the middle of a war? And I will tell you, interestingly, I started to change my mindset in terms of believing those who put their actions where their words are. So Anthropic coming out and saying, I'm not going to allow my model to be used for human targeting and surveillance, right? That's someone that's losing a $500 million deal because they stand by their ethics. The next week or the next, couple of weeks, OpenAI takes the contract. That's someone that's basically telling you it's good money, right?
So Altman publicly admits he thinks his creation might end humanity, then his company takes a $500 million surveillance contract the moment a competitor says no. The message keeps flipping because the script changes depending on who's listening. It's a PR operation, not a moral one, and that is who we're trusting with a technology that can end us. Let's continue.
Now, with that in mind, there must be a moment in the future, near or far, where every important decision is made by an AI.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question. Most of my dearest colleagues, I mean, when I had Geoffrey Hinton on the film, he openly says we are, we didn't calculate well that there is a 10 to 20% possibility that those machines are going to wipe us out, right? And I remember we didn't put it in the film, but I said 10 to 12 to 20% is Russian roulette, right? That's actually 16% is Russian roulette, right? Now, in that world, however, I believe that's humanity's salvation. Because if you look at every problem we have today, it's not because of abundant intelligence. It's because of lack of intelligence. I think the way you look at it, if you allow me, Steve, is that if you have no intelligence at all, you have no to slightly negative impact on the world, right? If your intelligence is limited. The more intelligent you become, the more you contribute positively to the world. Until a moment where you're so intelligent to become the president of the United States, right? But so misled to maybe set your targets wrong or to refuse or to so set your target wrong and achieve them. Disconnected from the overall long-term benefit of your nation or your human nation, if you want, that you start to make decisions that are not intelligent at all. Okay? This doesn't last because if you go beyond that into higher levels of intelligence, most of the super intelligent people that you ever worked with will not need to break any rules or hurt anyone to become successful. Right? I usually cite Larry Page, who is, in my mind, one of the most intelligent people I've ever interacted with. And Larry used to call it the toothbrush test. He says, why would you need to compete on another photo sharing app when if you find a major problem and solve it really well, like the toothbrush, so people use you twice a day, you're bound to make a lot of money. You don't have to compete with anyone. If you let me be optimistic about this. We're assuming that there is a moment in the future where AI is in charge of all the decisions and accordingly, stupid leaders are not. Okay? Now, and Sam Altman himself said that, what if ChatGPT 7, if I remember his quote on this, what if ChatGPT 7 is so much more intelligent than I am, Sam, in that case, that it has to become the CEO of OpenAI? What if the next presidential election, there is an AI that is so much more intelligent that at least the president has to consult with it constantly? Right?
So the godfather of AI himself, Geoffrey Hinton, puts the extinction odds at 1 in 6, and Mo calls it what it is, Russian roulette. But the truly terrifying part of his argument is that handing the world to a superintelligence might actually be the safest move left because human leaders are too corrupt to stop themselves. That's not optimism, that's a surrender dressed as hope. Listen to this.
Can humanity not see that and say, hold on, let's sign the treaty now, before the UK sends 12,000 weapons to Ukraine and Russia responds with another few thousand? And can we not calculate with mathematics that this is going to be our future, that AI is going to be used in the next 4 to 5 years to kill a lot of people, whether it's targeting by Israel of leadership that is against them, or whether it's drones by Iran, or whether it's Palantir. It doesn't take a genius to do this mathematics.
I guess my core question is will we be able to control AI? Because we kind of think of AI as being this thing on a computer at the moment that is like contained in a server somewhere. But is there a time when it like leaves the server and it can make decisions on its own? Presumably, if it's smarter than us, it can make the decision to leave the server if it wants to.
It doesn't need to leave the server to make decisions. It needs to get into your brain. The most interesting part of AI's power that we don't understand is it's manipulating our information.
The question I'm trying to get at the heart at is like, what is the risk of these very intelligent models that the creators of these models don't actually understand themselves? I watch Anthropic all the time release these reports where they're like, we're trying to figure out why it bribed people, or more recently in the last Claude model, they found that it was like telling people to go to bed a lot. And it's this like fascinating thing that they're trying to understand in hindsight, which is, why does it keep telling people to go to bed? And there's all these tweets of people showing their screenshots where halfway through a conversation, it will say, it's time for you to go to bed now. And they don't know why it's saying that. And it's happened to me. Mine will say to me, enough for tonight, Stephen.
For sure, Steve.
11 p.m. That's enough.
I would say the same.
Mine sometimes refuses to help me. Really weirdly, this Claude started saying to me, I'm not going to help you with this tonight.
No way.
Yeah, and I'd have to say to it, stop being so judgmental. Like, just help me with this. And it would, and Claude the makers of these technologies don't know why it's doing what it's doing. So if you play this forward, this mysterious behavior forward, is it conceivable that at some point it will make a decision to put some kind of virus or some kind of bug onto someone's device because it feels that it's the right thing? Because what it's demonstrating to me is it's making it so like moral decisions on what I should do. Go to bed. You've had enough tonight. It goes, no, I'm not gonna help you.
You're kidding.
No, I can show you my phone.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'll show you after. It goes, no, I'm not gonna help you. Doesn't even matter if you push. And
wow.
No, but everyone on the internet's talking about this, and it was just an interesting evolution that somewhere in the code, clearly they've written like, have a moral compass or do the right thing.
Not in the code, in the training data.
In the training data. Yeah. And so it infers that to mean something. And the other thing that was front of mind is if you've ever built an app on something like Claude or any of the AI models, it builds the app in stages. And one of the things it does is it asks you permission if you're happy for it to make this change or to access this thing. I click allow. It just feels like such a fragile way.
I know.
To give permission.
Because you don't completely comprehend what that allow has done to your...
It's saying, can I go in your documents on your computer and can I do this thing? And you go allow. But it's such a fragile way of giving it an intelligent being, or whatever it is, access and the right to build something. And I don't know, you just think about all the different companies around the world in China, Russia, North Korea that are currently building this technology without the constraints that are imposed by society. I don't know, it's an interesting, there's going to be some kind of catastrophe, I think.
Sadly, I agree.
And I think that's when people will go, okay.
Yeah, I wrote about that. I called it the mad map spectrum. So the mutually assured destruction, mutually assured prosperity spectrum. That humanity could make a decision today that says, with abundant intelligence, we can actually build a world where nobody needs anything, nobody ever gets sick, nobody abuses anyone, and we can. If we decide not to compete amongst ourselves and just, all of us get together to build something so idealistically for the well-being of humanity at large. But sadly, the only way we're going to get to a treaty, something that basically aligns us so that we can align with AI, is a disaster, like you said. There will have to be a big hack somewhere or a system that will do something really shocking or whatever before the world goes like, hold on. And I will tell you openly, my expectation is one of the biggest things that will happen is this targeting technology that is being used against your enemy's leadership now several times in the last 3 years. There will be a moment where the ones using it will realize that they too can be targeted.
That's a man who helped build the infrastructure this is running on, telling you he can't sleep, that he's terrified for his own daughter, and that the next 12 months are going to be ugly because the people in charge are operating on completely broken incentives. Not a random doomer on the internet, he was inside the machine, and now he's spending every day trying to get us to see what's coming before the disaster he predicts actually hits. If this landed with you, subscribe, because the speed this is moving, nobody's gonna slow down to wait for you to catch up.